How about a suicide pact?
So do any of you have a piece of media that you're unsure if you genuinely like it or you just enjoy it ironically? I have a lot of examples of that type of stuff. It could be mostly due to memes, but if there's one movie that I seriously cannot comprehend my thoughts on, it's definitely the B movie. Oh man, how do you open up with talking about the B movie? It's an anomaly of a film, just for how strange and odd it all is. I'm still unsure if I actually think this movie is funny or not. It's just so bizarre, I can't explain it. I mean, you all probably know this film by now from the many memes it's had over the years. Here's a fun fact, like Shrek the Third, I also saw this in theaters back in 2007. It was on a school field trip we went on, and that was kinda neat, I guess. I mean, how many school field trips have you been on that took you to a brand new movie in theaters? But anyways, what about the Funny Bee game? I find the developer for this one quite interesting. It was developed by Beanox, and yes, I agree with everyone that they probably were chosen for that pun. Beanox mostly did a lot of PC ports, a lot of which I've actually talked about before. But here's the thing, unless you want to count this PC game from 2001, this game was their first ever original title they developed that wasn't a port. Yes, before their work on the Spider-Man games, Crash Nitro Fueled, and titles they co-developed like a few entries in the Skylander series, this was the game they started out with. This game was on the Xbox 360, PS2, PC, and finally the Wii. Although the latter version was developed by a studio called Smart Bomb Interactive, who you might know from those two Snoopy games and Pac-Man World Rally. The Wii version is the exact same game though, minus the graphics, the motion controls, and weirdly one of the levels is cut out. Not sure why. Oh, and there was also a DS version too, but once again, I'll save that one for another time. Oh yeah, I should also clarify, unlike the Pixar games from the 7th generation where the game with the same name could be a completely different title from console to console, the Dreamworks games, at least on the main home consoles, were pretty much the exact same game. There are a couple of exceptions later down the road, particularly when we get to THQ's era with Dreamworks games, but otherwise, for the most part, if you played the Wii version of a Dreamworks game, you played it on 360 as well. Just thought I'd clarify that. Anyways, back to the B-movie game. I've never played this one before. I only heard about it from other people, but that's pretty much it. I'm going into this pretty much blind, and I'll be sticking to the 360 version for this video, since that's the console I've been playing most of these mid-2000s Dreamworks games on. Gotta have that consistency. So, if you remember how the Shark Tale console game presented its story, the same applies here too. The story is told through this interview that takes place after the events of the film, but retells the events of the movie through this interview. And that's pretty much it. It's just the movie's plot. I mean, Barry goes through a lab and he fights enemy bugs. That wasn't in the movie, I guess, but otherwise, it's pretty close to the movie's plot. Also, unlike all the other Dreamworks games before, this game actually gets a couple actors from the movie to reprise their roles. In previous games, you're lucky to even get one actor returning. Like, aside from the Madagascar game, which got Tom McGrath as Skipper back for it, the only actors to return for previous Dreamworks games are maybe some minor characters here and there. But in the B-movie game, you actually got a good amount returning. It's not everyone, but you got Jerry Seinfeld, Patrick Warburton, and John Goodman returning from the movie, and that is pretty cool to see.
Hurt, betrayed, angry, gut punched, nervous, ambivalent, ticked off, peeved, really the gamut.
You felt the gamut? A to Z?
Maybe not Z, at least W.
In terms of the rest of the presentation, the animations look pretty good in the cutscenes, and I also think the actual environments look alright. The in-game models are a bit of a mixed bag. Most of the main characters look pretty nice for the 360, but the background NPCs look really bad, and some of them, I swear, look like they've seen some demons. I really enjoyed the music. Some of it's from the movie, but there's also a good chunk of original music here that I really liked. So the presentation is pretty decent. I don't really have anything that bad to say about it aside from the pretty awful background character models, and the game does chug a couple times during some sequences, especially in the beginning. Oh gosh, it turns into a slideshow sometimes. But thankfully, it doesn't happen too often. But that's just the presentation. The actual game? Oh boy. So I will say first off, to give the gameplay credit, I do really like the concept here. It's split into two main sections. You have the main story chapters, and then you have the Hive as a hub world where you complete jobs. You see, in order to play more of the story, you gotta do enough jobs to gain access to the next level. Think of it like how the early Saints Row games had you do jobs to build up your respect to unlock more story missions. I can't believe I just compared Saints Row and the B-movie game together. What even? But yeah, it's exactly like that. There is a lot of variety in the jobs you do. There's fixing cars, taxi driving, food delivery, racing, a couple of honey jobs, and so on. It's a good variety. As for the main story missions, well, they are pretty much either exploration, various quicktime events, navigating through rain, multiple shooting sections, and the bosses. All of this doesn't sound too bad on paper. Again, I do really like what they are going for here. But in execution, no, it sucks. For one, I find this hub world so boring, and that goes for both sections. Visually, it's just not that interesting. They're so bland. There's no standout landmarks to remember stuff by. I just find it so unengaging. A good hub world should be visually cool, landmarks to remember stuff by, and just something that is memorable. Look at the stuff like the 3 hubs in Sonic Adventure 1, Delfino Plaza and Mario Sunshine. Or if you want a couple licensed game examples, the hub from Battle for Bikini Bottom, or Radiator Springs from the first Cars game. These are games that have engaging hub worlds that are visually interesting, and most importantly, memorable. Here, this hub is so boring to walk around. I don't remember anything interesting that happens here, and I just really disliked it. As for the jobs, man, talk about a snooze fest. I don't mind the idea of having to do them to progress to the story, but none of them are fun enough to really justify doing them to get to the next chapter. Look, I know you can make the argument that, well, the jobs are work. It's not always supposed to be fun like in real life. But the thing is, I want to play a game to have fun, not doing chores like this. The racing feels underwhelming. The car mechanic is dull. The food delivery is kinda neat, having you to keep the stack from not falling, but nothing much else to it. The taxi job just feels like if Crazy Taxi was just called Normal Taxi. All the honey related ones in the honey section are so boring too. Like, what is exciting about catching honeycombs or grabbing jars or filling bowls up? This is dull. These just don't justify having to do these as mandatory for beating the game. These should have been a side mode, not something you have to do for the story. It's just padding all around. And if you want to talk about padding, sometimes there will be these attacks that happen which you have to do in order to get back to doing your job quota, and these are literally the same shooting sections from the main game. No changes at all. That is clearly padding. I hated whenever these came up because they just feel so forced in. And even then, say the jobs weren't made mandatory and the random attacks weren't here, I don't even find the main story chapters that fun. The exploration stages are really bland. Some have you go around and pollinate flowers, which is just so dull. A couple of you just explore the environments to get somewhere, like the lab and the restaurant. These weren't too bad, I guess. The shooting is just kinda there. It works, but there's really not much to it. The QuickTime events are so whatever. I don't hate QuickTime events in games, but here they just don't have an energy to them compared to other games. They just don't feel very exciting to me. And same thing goes for the bosses too. Again, I just don't find these very exciting, and the QuickTime events during these fights are just so bland. Also, the Ken fight is literally the Solaris fight from Sonic 06. Yeah, I know what I said. I did like the levels where you have to get through the rain. The gimmick here is pretty cool, having you slow down everything and going through the rain as fast as you can before it returns to normal. I like these stages, though unfortunately they're the only ones I really enjoyed. But the big problem with all the story chapters is just how long they go on for. I swear, some of these chapters go on for way too long, especially some of the quick time events. My gosh, these last what feel like forever. So yeah, I think the story chapters are also kind of bad. I can say though that there are some things this game does do pretty well. Like I said, while I think the execution is a mess, I do like the idea this game was going for. It definitely could have worked. The game functions well enough. I thought it controlled just fine. I do like the rain stages, as I said, and there is a lot of collectibles you can find, like these honeycombs you can find to buy vehicles and costumes. There's an arcade with some very quirky minigames, as well as concept art, and if you're playing the 360 version, a bunch of achievements. Although some of these are really weird, like for one of them, all you have to do is enter a car. No, not drive one, just get inside a car. And then there was one where you just press the hover button once in the hub world. Why are these achievements so weird? But, you know, with all this, there is a lot of stuff to do, so if you're going for 100%, it's got a lot of meat in that regard. It's a shame though that this game is kinda garbage. Yeah, I'm sure you can tell by now, I didn't really enjoy playing through this game. I was relieved to be done with it because this game just felt like it went on forever. A repetitive job system that puts me to sleep, a hub world that is not very engaging, a story mode that just sucks, doing the jobs were not worth it to play some of these stages, and just I had an awful time with this game. I guess it's better than the Shrek the Third game, but anything is better than an empty experience. This game is still bottom of the barrel in terms of Dreamworks games. I can't recommend this one. I know this game has some fans, and if you like it, that's perfectly fine, but man, I just found this to be one of the most dull experiences I've ever had with a video game. Just stick with the movie, or if you want to play something like this, I don't know, there's tons of other better games that star bug characters. But yeah, that's all she wrote. Well, in the menu, there is a trailer for the Kung Fu Panda game, so I guess that's our next game we're going to be talking about. Plus, Legendary Warriors on the Wii, because why not? Gosh, I hope they're both good. I need to play a good Dreamworks game again. It's been so long. But if you like this video, give it a like. And if you're new here to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Also, if you've played the B-movie game, what did you think of it? Maybe you found something in this game that I didn't. Let me know in the comments below. I hope you all have an amazing day, and take care. Bye!